Hi guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. So today I thought I'd share with you my TBR as well as some recommendations for the middle grade magic readathon. This is a readathon that was created by Kara at Wild Book Garden here on YouTube. She also has 3 co-hosts and I will link all of their channels in the description box down below. But this is a readathon that is focused on middle grade books, and as a middle grade lover myself, I thought it would be foolish for me not to partake. So this readathon is taking place from July 14th to July 24th. So yeah, 10 days, middle grade reading, sounds right up my alley. Also, if you hear kids in the background, those are my kids. They're home this summer, so they're being a little loud right now. Hopefully they're not too distracting. But anyway, let's dig in and get started with my TBR and some recommendations. This readathon has 5 different prompts. Each of these prompts kind of battles a misconception that publishers or readers sometimes have about middle grade books. So each one you'll see as I go through them, it's something that typically publishers will say, oh, well, that's not middle grade, or that is definitely has to be middle grade because it fits within these boundaries. And so you'll see that kind of as I get into these prompts. You can ignore the prompts if you want, or you can take part in trying to fulfill the prompts. I think that they're actually not too bad. So I am going to work on fulfilling all 5 prompts. And so that is what my TBR as well as recommendations are going to reflect. The first prompt is to pick a book in your favorite genre and read that book in a middle grade format. So for this, I am picking historical fiction genre, and I'm going to be reading The War I Finally Won by Kimberly Brubaker Bradley. I read The War That Saved My Life last month, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really loved it. So I wanted to go ahead and dig right into this one. I will be listening to this one on audio, I think, but I do have the hard copy as well. So either way, I want to get this one done for the historical fiction aspect. I also thought I might recommend some other historical fiction middle grade books that I have enjoyed reading. So if you are a historical fiction lover yourself, these might be some books that you would be interested in checking out for this challenge. The first book I would recommend is The War That Saved My Life. Like I said, I read it last month. I gave it 5 stars. I thought it was fantastic. It is about a little girl who has a club foot. She leaves London during World War II to go live out in the country with a lady. And when she was in London, her mother was severely abusive towards her. And so it's just kind of her story on how she is healing from that abuse, mentally and emotionally, and how she is learning how to be loved again. And it was phenomenal. I really enjoyed it, and so this is definitely one I think you should check out. Another one that I think you should check out is Esperanza Rising by Pam Munoz Ryan. I read this during middle grade March this year. This follows a little girl, Esperanza, as her family is fleeing Mexico and coming to the United States to become migrant or immigrant workers in California here. It is set in 1924, and so that's a little bit of historical fiction as well. Absolutely wonderful story. Really enjoyed. Another one that I read during middle grade March that I thoroughly enjoyed, it's one of my favorite books of the year so far, is Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth by Sheila O'Connor. This is a story that takes place during the Vietnam War in the 1970s, and it follows a little girl, Renee, who has a paper route and starts corresponding via letter with one of her paper route customers. And so it is told epistolary, and so it's all in letters, and it's just letters back and forth between Renee and her elderly customer, Mr. Marsworth. And it kind of goes over Renee's concerns with her brother being called up for the draft and how much anxiety she has about that. It covers peaceful protesting. It covers bullying quite a bit, and just war in general and how it affects kids. And I thoroughly enjoyed this one. Loved it. Another historical fiction book I would recommend, also by Pam Munoz Ryan, is Echo, and I would specifically recommend this on audio. This is a story about a harmonica and how it impacts each of 3 different children's lives. They are told in 3 completely different stories, and then at the end, all the 3 stories come together. And 2 of the 3 take place around World War II time, and the third one might be a little bit after World War II, maybe. I'm not 100% sure. But it is still historical. And so this was one that was brilliant on audiobook. Because of the harmonica's importance in the book, the audiobook really emphasizes the music, and you get to hear the music in the audiobook, and it's absolutely wonderful. And so this is definitely one I think you should check out if you are a fan of historical fiction. Prompt number 2 is to read a book that has dark subject matter. So for this one, for my personal TBR, I am going to be reading My Brother's Shadow by Tom Avery. And this is a story that is about a little girl whose older brother committed suicide, I believed. He definitely died. I'm pretty sure he committed suicide. And she is dealing with extreme grief and depression following that. And so it just kind of covers different aspects of suicide as well as depression in a middle grade format. And so this one's pretty short. So I don't think it'll take too long for me to get through, but definitely one that I think will cover a lot of really dark subject matter. For other books that cover dark subject matter, I am going to recommend Bridge to Terabithia and Walk Two Moons. These both cover grief and death. And so I think that these 2 would definitely be ones to check out if you're interested in reading about grief in middle grade books. Another one that I think covers not necessarily dark subject matter, but heavier subject matter is Wish Tree by Katherine Applegate. This is one that I read last year, I believe, and it covers racism and prejudices that are held against not only people of color, but people of different cultures. And so this is one that is definitely impactful. I also would recommend Refugee by Alan Grant. This is one that covers 3 different stories of children who were refugees in different situations. So one took place during World War II. It was a Jewish refugee. One takes place in Cuba during the Cuban crisis, and they're fleeing to Miami. And then one takes place in Sudan currently. And so each of those 3 children's stories are told in this book, and it was really, really well done and really a beautiful story. So those are the books that I would recommend that cover a dark or a heavy subject matter. The third prompt is to read an Own Voices story that is middle grade. And for my personal TBR, I'm going to be reading The Land of Forgotten Girls by Erin Entrada Kelly. This is the story of a family from the Philippines that moves to Louisiana, and the little girls are kind of lost as far as family goes. Their mother and I think sister or brother passed away, and then their father abandons them, and so they're left in the care of their evil stepmother, and they are trying to escape and kind of find their sense of family again. And this is written, Erin Entrada Kelly is from the Philippines, and so she is Filipino American, and so this is Own Voices. This is one that I picked up in a thrift haul that I did, and so I kind of found this one at my local thrift store and picked it up because it sounded interesting, and so I thought that I would go ahead and read that for this prompt. Some Own Voices books that I have read that I think would be good for this prompt. The first one is Forget Me Not by Ellie Terry. This is the story of a little girl with Tourette's, and Ellie Terry has Tourette's, and so this is definitely one that I read during middle grade March this year that I absolutely fell in love with. It is told in verse for part of it, so it's told from 2 different perspectives. It's told from the girl with Tourette's perspective, so that part is told in verse, and then it's also told from her neighbor who is Chinese American, I think, and his parts are told in just regular writing. So this was one that I really, really enjoyed during middle grade March, and His Own Voices. I would also recommend Pashmina by Nidhi Chanani. And this is an Indian Own Voices graphic novel. This is about a girl who finds a pashmina that her mom had hidden away, and upon touching it, she is kind of transported to India and starts learning about her heritage that way. And so this was a really good graphic novel that I enjoyed during middle grade March of this past year. So that one was really good. I would also recommend El Defo by Cece Bell. This is another graphic novel that is told about a little girl who is hard of hearing. It is the graphic novel, the characters are animated to look like rabbits, I think. And so that's just kind of the approach that she took in writing this, but it is a memoir of sorts because the author is also hard of hearing and had to wear a hearing aid at school. And this was back when the hearing aids were like big boxes on your chest, and so it wasn't as discreet as some of them are now. And this is one that was really good that would be appropriate for even younger middle grade audiences as well. And then the other middle grade Own Voices book that I wanted to recommend is Amal Unbound by Aisha Saeed. And this is a story of a Pakistani girl, and Aisha Saeed is Pakistani as well. And so this is another one that was really good I read this year, and it just covers the little Pakistani girl and her desire for an education and the struggles that she goes with in order to make that happen. And so that was a really good one as well. So those are my Own Voices recommendations. The next prompt is to bend the rules and to read a book that bends some of the traditional rules of middle grade books. So whether that means that the main characters are pushing the age boundaries that are typically seen in middle grade, or it covers a subject matter or is a length that isn't typical of middle grade books, things along those lines. And so for this one, I decided to go ahead and read one of the Betsy Tacy books. I will probably be reading Betsy and Joe because I've already started Betsy Was a Junior, and these are the ones that are next in line for my Betsy Tacy read along that I'm doing this year. Betsy and Joe, by this time, when they get to that book, they are seniors in high school. And so that's definitely pushing the age boundaries for middle grade books, but these are shelved in the children's section in my library. So these are ones that push the boundaries quite a bit. I also, as far as recommendations go, this qualifies for one of my recommendations as well. I think any of the Betsy Tacy books that are past book number 4, so once you get past Betsy and Tacy Go Downtown, I think was the last one. After that, the girls are in high school, and traditionally that would be YA here in the United States. And so they are all still shelved in the children's section at my library regardless, all the way through her wedding and everything. So I think that these are definitely ones that do bend the rules a little bit. So those are books that I would recommend, as well as my own TBR for that challenge. And then the last challenge is Reader's Choice, and read just any middle grade book that strikes your fancy. And for this one, I'm going to read Cicely Jenkins' Future Author Extraordinaire by Susan Tan. This is one that I heard about from Sarah at the Library of Sarah. She said that this was her favorite book of the year so far, and she has really raved about this book. This is about a little girl who's getting a baby sister, and she has decided that before her sister is born, she wants to become a published author. And so she definitely has a deadline to do that, and so she's going to start writing about her own life. And this is one that I think is going to be so much fun to read, and I'm really looking forward to reading it. Now, as far as middle grade recommendations for the Reader's Choice prompt, I'm going to tell you just a couple of my favorites that I think would be a good starting point for you if you are interested in getting into reading a little bit of middle grade. The first ones I'm going to recommend are graphic novels, and those are Smile and Sisters, both by Raina Telgemeier. These are both kind of memoir based. They're based off of Raina's life, and these are definitely middle grade appropriate. The first one, Smile, is covering Raina's experience with braces and dental procedures. She ends up having a really bad mouth injury and has to go through a bunch of different surgeries and oral contraptions trying to fix all of the issues that she's having with her teeth and her mouth. And then Sisters goes through her relationship with her sister and how being a kid, that can be rough. And it was really a great novel, graphic novel. And so those ones are definitely ones to check out. I also would recommend The Tale of Despero by Kate DiCamillo. This is one about a mouse and a rat and a princess and some soup. And it is just a fun, whimsical story. It is absolutely fantastic. I read this one out loud to my kids and they loved it. It is a Newbery Medal winner, and so it's just a really, really great, fun middle grade read. I would also recommend Wonder by R.J. Palacio, and this is one that is about a little boy who has a facial deformity and his experience going into a public school setting for the first time, and bullies and being accepted and wanting to be like any of the other kids, and kind of what he goes through to achieve that. And so this is one that is brilliant and amazing and definitely worth the read, adult or middle grade. It's a great, great book. And then my last recommendation is Nevermore by Jessica Townsend. And this is one that has received quite the buzz over the past year. And it is one that has often been compared to Harry Potter. I also read this during middle grade March this year. And it is just full of whimsy and magic. And it is fantastic. No wizards or witches, but still just a little girl being transported to a new world and trying to get into a school and her experience with her peers along the way. And it is a really, really great read as well. So those are all of my middle grade magic recommendations, as well as my personal TBR for this readathon. I hope that you are planning on participating in this readathon. If you are, please comment down below and let me know some of the books that you're planning on reading during this 10-day readathon. I would love to know, as well as any books that I didn't mention that you think would fulfill some of these prompts. Maybe other people could get some suggestions from you, and I might take some of those suggestions as well. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya!